Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We're gonna hop in the car and talk about why I chose DMann Tuning, why you should potentially choose DMann Tuning, and basically the whole entire process about picking a tuner for my 2022 WRX. I ended up going with DMann. We're gonna talk about the pros and cons, why I did it, and basically like an informational breakdown on e-tuning and just specifically why I think the best option for you guys is probably DMann. I'm not being paid to say this. This is just, kind of my experience, all the data that I've derived and the experience from somebody that works in the aftermarket parts community and knows quite a lot about the tuning side of things and what to kind of avoid. So we're gonna talk about what to avoid as well if you wanna do your own kind of like, what kind of tuner, what type of tuning, how do I vet a tuner, who should I go with? We're gonna discuss all of that. We're also gonna do some polls so you guys can see my raw reactions of the tune on my car. It's making ridiculous power. Let's hop into the car and let's get going. All right, we're doing some mountain driving specifically because I feel like now that I have a tuned WRX, I've got to do some interior WRX polls, which is like where this channel came from. So we're gonna do some pretty mean acceleration in this video. So don't leave just now. There will be some fun stuff going on so you guys can see my reaction to some of the crazy power that I'm making. But DMann Tuning, Anthony over at DMann. Why did I choose DMann? So this was a decision that took months to make and a lot of research, and obviously I've been very involved in the aftermarket community because I run a business in the aftermarket community and I'm very involved in tuners and I see a lot of data around that. And I'm also somebody that understands that a lot of you guys follow what I do and look for me to make or help them make decisions and create unbiased and objective content. And in all of that, in all of the journey of finding somebody that I felt comfortable representing and being like, this is the person that I chose to use on this channel, because I know for years to come you guys are going to see these videos, I've landed with Anthony over at DMann. Now, I've been very familiar with him for probably the last 6 or 7 years, quite a long time, and he's been a pretty profound tuner. He's done a lot of vehicles and just has had a lot of success, and a lot of his success has flourished and grown with the VB WRX. Now we're going to pause for a second because this is one of those times where I get to legitimately accelerate my car. Let's turn a little bit here and then let's do it. Wow. Sorry, I had to slow down there. We got going pretty quick. This car is ridiculous. It's amazing. Sorry, I need a second to comprehend what just happened. It's so damn fast. So he's had a lot of success with the VB platform and a lot of just positive interaction with the community and great results. And on paper, really, really, really good kind of tuning output, meaning very low instances of things going wrong, customer complaints, or anything that happens. If you don't know tuning, it can be a hit or miss market, especially when it comes to e-tuning. And that's the other thing. So with the VB WRX, because there are certain aspects of this car have changed from the VA, how things are run, and just, resiliency around e-tuning, these cars, and just because they're newer cars, you have less problems when you're tuning, they've been a lot more resilient around e-tuning, which is really exciting because it means that you can save a lot of money and effort and get your car tuned remotely versus having to go to a pro tuner. Now, you can go to a pro tuner and have great individualized results. You'll probably make a little bit more power, but unless you're doing anything crazy, or you live in an interesting situation, or you live, very close to an e-tuner, yeah, sure. I mean, very close to a pro tuner, yeah, sure, you should go to the pro tuner, but a lot of us don't. And e-tuning for this car is a lot better than it was for the VA. It's great for the VA. It's just very, very resilient for the VB. But with that said, one of the things that stood out about Anthony and just the way that he approaches tuning is essentially the decision making on why I went with DMann. And the approach is to make power but not to push the limits. And I think that a lot of people in that hear they hear that you're not maxing out the power. No, the reality is when people go to their tuner, they're just like, let's make as much as possible. And more often than not, tuners will hear that and just say, sure, we'll make as much as possible. Do you actually want to do that? And people are like, yes. They don't really understand the fact that they're saying, yeah, take all the safeties off. Let's go for it. Which just means if something goes wrong, you don't have any safety net. So what a lot of the tuning through DMann is it's making pretty average power for the parts, meaning like you're going to be 5 or 6 horsepower off of what the people that are really, really pushing these cars are going to make. But he's not going to chase an additional, unless you ask for it, he's not going to chase an additional 5 or 6 wheel horsepower, which could risk the engine or the safety of the car or the drivability. And you're not going to notice 5 or 6 wheel horsepower. So like if you're chasing numbers, sure, you can ask for 346 wheel horsepower, but 340 is going to be just as fun. You won't notice the difference in 6 wheel horsepower, and that difference in 6 wheel horsepower could be a little bit of safety around the tune itself. And I'm objectifying it based on horsepower, but this kind of carries over to a lot of different aspects of the tuning itself, how the power is made, the approach to longevity, right? When you go with some tuners, you know, you're telling yourself the car's just not going to last as long because I'm putting wear and tear on the car, which is fine, right? That's essentially what tuning is at its core. But what's happening at DMann, a lot of the tuning is how long can you keep your WRX long term with the tune, and just taking that approach and taking this approach of like, we want to enjoy tuned vehicles for as long as possible, but still have a ton of fun with them is, in my opinion, the best way of looking at tuning. And I think it's actually, as sad as it sounds, fairly unique, because a lot of tuners just don't take that approach, and you see people blowing engines and stuff. And I'm not saying that you're gonna blow your engine or anything like that with a different tuner. I'm just saying that the approach is different, and tuners don't hold any liability. So when they're trying to make as much power as possible, it's almost like marketing as well. So when I look and talk with tuners, I want them to not only represent their trade and what they're doing and do all that kind of stuff, but I want them to talk about the customer and end user long term, and talk about awareness and have that open conversation about longevity and adjusting power and being reasonable. I also think, especially with e-tuning, the biggest thing that I look at is honesty around actual power generation. With e-tuning, because you're not getting on a dyno, you're using basically a virtual dyno. And unfortunately, there are instances where people are getting much inflated, let's say, power readings or something. And I think that comes from that, like, you know, there's this approach that a Mustang dyno is different than a different kind of dyno, and there are different kinds of dynos, and they do give different readings. But you generally have to clarify which kind of dyno you're using when you're telling somebody your wheel horsepower, if you're not using what is traditionally accepted as the lower wheel horsepower reading, which is the most accurate. And if you don't do that, somebody that's running 330 wheel horsepower could say they're running 390 wheel horsepower, and then they get to a dyno and they get 328 or something, and they're like, what's going on? I find people that represent the actual numbers to be the best. Now, do I know exactly what my car is making? No, but let's give it this an acceleration here for a second. Hold on, let me. Jesus. I can't even, wow. I gotta, whew. Do I know to a T the power this car is making? No, I don't, because I haven't had it on a dyno yet. But have I gotten a, look, you're probably making this, even though other people are going to tell you you're making this? Yes, I have. That transparency and honesty is honestly the most important part of the entire process, and being open and transparent and all that kind of stuff. On top of that, I think that the way that the DMann structure with flash and goes, which are like kind of off the shelf but not really, and the fact that those are continuously updating, yes, they're like COD, but you get a lot more customization, ability to use other parts, more of a free market approach to tuning. I know most tuners do something similar to this, but I think this is extremely powerful. And I think the other big thing is availability and support. I think that I will be the first to say I'm not going to bash any tuners or talk negatively on anyone, but there are definitely popular tuners out there that they're not good at what they're doing, and one of the biggest failures is their lack of communication and failure to do right by the customer. Now again, I'm not here to bash, but it happens, and unfortunately happens a lot, and availability is really, really strong and important here. So those are the reasons I chose DMann. I mean, it's the combination of support, It's the combination of knowledge and repeatability and data on the market about what they're doing over there. And I think it's also about the approach around longevity and tuning with, you know, intent, and not necessarily chasing a few extra horsepower to have a really cool tune sheet and have a customer, like, you know, be like, oh my God, I'm making this amount of power, and then have an issue later down the line. So I think that's all of, like, it's a combination of all of that. And I think that I think the one takeaway here, and I'm not saying I'm not paid by DMann, I'm not sponsored or anything here. I think the takeaway is you're picking a tuner, especially tuning your car or something you love. It's like a balance between finding your best friend and your doctor at the same time. And I know that sounds both extreme and not extreme, but I think there are qualities to both aspects that are really important. You want somebody that you're comfortable with. You want somebody you're comfortable asking questions that might, on the surface, make you feel dumb or something like that, because there's no such thing as a dumb question, but understanding the basics is very important. You want somebody that's gonna, like, say it straight to you. You want all those aspects of a best friend, but you also want the aspect of a doctor where you're gonna trust them with a very expensive asset. You're gonna trust them to know what they're doing and do, you know, pretty significant work on something that's very expensive for most people, very critical in their lives, and you're gonna trust all of that, right? So you want kind of this combination between the two. So whether you're gonna go DMann or not, make sure you take all of the approaches. And actually, before I finish that, let's leave you with one acceleration here. Let's get out and make a turn. I'm making enough power now that I need to be straight wheeled here. Let's go for it. Jesus Christ. This car is so fast. All right, I'm a little speechless. This car is so fast. But if you're gonna use DMann or anyone else, I think you should take all the aspects of what has been talked about in this video and approach choosing a tuner that way. Choosing somebody to tune your car should not be done lightly. It is so critical that you really think out your decision making around what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it with and what that interaction is, because that person's going to be your lifeline. As you drive your car more, things will happen and go wrong. Driving a tuned vehicle, that is just how it works. I know that's scary, but like with anything else, if you're tuned or not, if something goes wrong, you still have to solve the problem. Just when you're tuned, every once in a while, there's a little bit more nuance, whether it is, can I take my car to the dealer immediately? Is it a tune problem because the variable has changed? Is something wearing down so you have a slightly less defined response, and that's adjusting the tune? Generally, it's not a tune thing, but just having the tune makes the diagnosis and the process of solving it a little bit more complicated. And generally, when our cars don't run perfectly, the tune doesn't run very well either, so it just makes that process different. I've even gone through this, right, with my VA WRX a couple times, and your lifeline becomes the person that you choose to tune with. And that's why it's so critical, because some people go with these high volume, you know, good on the surface until you look into them tuners, and then all of a sudden they have a problem and they don't get a response for like a month or something, or like they don't get a response at all because some of the tuners that do a lot of tuning kind of absolve themselves after the fact, and they won't support you long term. And again, I'm not here to bash tuners, but that's truth, right? That happens, and it's way more common than you would imagine. With that said, I know that there's a lot of information in this video and that we've talked about a lot. That's why I chose DMann. That's why you should take the same approach choosing a tuner. One of the beautiful things is I've done that kind of for you if you're looking for somebody. Again, I have no financial relationship with DMann Tuning. I just genuinely like the product that he makes and what he's been doing. So that's my 2 cents. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I guess kind of going forward, I think, in terms of like who I would recommend for this channel, at least for the VB WRX, that's who we will at the current time be recommending. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.